Before May 1776, the majority of the representatives to the Continental Congress were not thinking about independence. They still held out hope that the colonies could be reconciled to the king. And they really didn't blame the king. They more often blamed Parliament. They felt the king was just receiving some bad advice. Now, it was true that since mid-1775, they had had periodic military skirmishes with the British troops, notably at Lexington and Concord. But each of these skirmishes the colonists meant to just be pushing back a little bit against what they felt were the overwhelming and unfair policies of Parliament. And they thought that if they pushed back a little bit, that Parliament and the king would understand how serious the grievances were and would readjust their policies accordingly. But then things started to turn in April and May of 1776. The colonists heard that King George, far from being dispassionate or removed from their situation, had actually signed off on hiring foreign mercenaries to be brought to America to put them under control. And that really turned the tide against him by the American colonists. Meanwhile, militarily, things were also turning badly for the colonists. They had had a disastrous campaign against Canada. They now heard that one of the greatest expeditions ever to come across the Atlantic until World War I would bring large numbers of British troops from England and also bring troops down from Canada in a kind of pincer movement to crush the colonies and crush the colonists' efforts in New York City. So militarily, the tide was starting to turn as well against the colonists. By late May, those who stood for independence felt that the colonists were basically split, that the northern colonists would side for independence, the southern colonists would side for independence, but the middle colonies, New York and Pennsylvania especially, were probably still on the fence. Richard Henry Lee's resolution of the Continental Congress on June 7, 1776, brought this entire situation to a boil. His resolution read as follows: Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, that it is expedient forthwith to take the most effectual measures for forming foreign alliances, that a plan of confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for their consideration and approbation. If the Continental Congress had voted on that at that moment, they would not have had unanimous assent to that resolution. So they decided to put it off to the side and set up three committees, a committee having to do with foreign alliances, one on setting up a government, and the third to draft a Declaration of Independence, so that once the colonies could decide if they were for or against it, they could move forward rather quickly. And it was that third committee, the drafting committee, that would set the basis for the Declaration of Independence.
Vizi online texts are a new kind of textbook, built with the help of great subject matter experts. These new learning resources have already helped thousands of students succeed. Our original content uses animations, simulations, video and graphics, self-assessments, exercises, and review materials to engage students in their study. Our approach is proven to improve learning outcomes, and that's why Vizi exists, to transform lives by making education more engaging.